welcome to Cooking Up Change. I'm Theodora and I've teamed up with Chefs for Impact to cook with some of the top chefs shaking up the culinary world to bring you fun, easy, and delicious recipes that not only taste so good, but are also good for the planet. This episode is going to be all about foods that help fight climate change, and we're going to be exploring that through oysters and kelp. And today I'm going to learn how to prepare them deliciously by the world-renowned chef Anita Lo. Anita is the founder of the Michelin star restaurant Anissa in New York. Anita is definitely a role model for female chefs all around the world, and I'm super excited to be cooking this recipe with her today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Anita. I'm really looking forward to making this dish with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be preparing?
So I'm going to be making some fried great gun oysters that we just got from the farm, just a 10-minute boat ride from here. A buckwheat noodle salad, like a Japanese inspired buckwheat noodle salad with sugar kelp, also from the same farm. This is based on a recipe that I had at Anissa back in the day. This is sort of a more rustic version.
And we actually visited Great Gun Oysters and picked these oysters out ourselves, which was such a cool experience while learning about their 6 microenvironments. The reason oysters are such a big help in fighting climate change is because they can significantly modify and create new habitats for other species by forming reefs while also filtering the water. One oyster can filter up to 45 gallons of water a day. And kelp has the potential to greatly reduce ocean acidification while sequestering harmful greenhouse gases. So both of these foods are powerful natural tools in the fight against climate change.
So what is the first step in preparing this pan-fried oyster recipe?
Well, I think we should open the oysters first. The best thing to do is to keep them really cold.
If you're cooking this at home, what's like a trick to making this a seamless experience?
You ask your fishmonger just to open them for you, or you can buy them that way too. But this was actually part of one of the first jobs I had in the restaurant industry. Was I had to open oysters at Boulet, and it's difficult. I'm no expert at this, but there's 2 different ways. What you definitely want to do is wrap your hand or have a glove like you have, just because you can stab yourself. The American way is you go in through the hinge, which is where the pointy end is. The French way is a different type of oyster knife. You go in through the side, and then you're just finding that muscle.
So, okay, I've managed to shuck this one, which I'm happy about, that I did that one under pressure, so I'm going to cut the muscle now. What do you typically do with your shells after you're done with the oysters?
Actually compost them, they'll take forever. But they've got nice calcium, which is good for your garden. In the restaurant business, there is an effort to save all the oyster shells and use them to rebuild reefs in the Hudson River.
Yeah, I've heard about the Billion Oyster Project that works out of the New York Harbor, and some crazy statistic is that in New York City alone, people consume over 500,000 oysters a week.
Yeah, I think you can find a whole bunch of ancient oyster shell mounds, you know, around this area, because they used to be so plentiful.
So now that we have the oysters shucked, I know we both had most of them shucked already, what is the next step for this recipe?
Let's prepare the garnishes first. Got that sugar kelp again. Great Gun is growing them this year for organic food for farms. And so I'm just gonna cut a little bit up. I don't need a lot. It'll make for a little bit of briny niceness. And then I have some radish here. I've got this enormous scallion from the Union Square Green Market. So I'm just cutting them on a bias because that is sort of more traditional in Asian cooking. A little bit of lemon juice. I've got a little bit of Japanese yuzu juice, and then some shiro dashi.
So obviously you're a very well-traveled chef, and you've had the opportunity to, cook and sample cuisines from all over the world. And I think especially here in the US, Asian cuisine is kind of grouped into this monolithic category. What would you want to impart on people watching this about, Asian cuisine at large and the nuances of all these cultures in people's own cooking and in their own kitchens?
Food is actually identity. When you lump an entire continent into a category, you're lumping a people, you're lumping people into a category. And Asia's huge, and it's also very, very diverse. It doesn't make sense. It's really more a thing about sensitivity. There's nothing wrong with making a dish that's sort of pan-Asian-ish as long as it tastes good. But it's about how you talk about it, really. You end up racializing food, and I think that's a problem. For the oysters, we need to make a dredge. I've got a little bit of Wonder flour. Fine dining restaurants have adopted it because it makes like a really nice crisp crust, and it doesn't clump. You know, because I'm using buckwheat flour and this is a little bit more nutty in flavor, which I think goes well with oysters, I'm gonna use half buckwheat flour. I'm just gonna eyeball this. I'm seasoning the dredge as well. I've got some salt in there and a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. To the water, we need to season. I'm gonna add a good amount of salt. You want it to taste like seawater. So I'm just gonna add this. So you put it in and you stir, stir, stir. These I want to get cold. This is a cold noodle salad. Just make sure that your noodles are really dry. And then we can put it in the bowl with the scallions and the sugar kelp. To that, we're going to add a little bit of the dashi, the shiro dashi, which is white dashi. So I'm going to use this microplane, which is, I think this is a great tool. It really just only you don't want to get any of that white pith, because that's the white pith of the lemon is bitter. And I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon for acidity. I've got, yeah, that yuzu juice again. This is really strong, so I'm just gonna put my thumb over it and get a little tiny bit in there. And I'm gonna add just a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. Mix it up.
I think my oil's definitely hot. The oil has started bubbling a little bit, which always makes me a little nervous.
Okay, so now we can dredge our oysters. Oh, you know what we can do? I'm gonna take a little bit of this oyster juice and put it into the noodles. So you don't want to, you know, you don't want the oysters too wet, so you just let them drip a little bit, and then you just put them in your dredge. Okay, so my oil is perfect right now. I'm gonna just start frying. Okay. It's pretty quick, but you do want to make sure that they get crispy. And it's a shallow fry, so I'm gonna have to turn them at one point. You're looking around the edges to see if it gets a little bit darker. That's what we want. We want a little bit of golden brown crispiness. So while that's cooking, I've arranged on my plate some of the sliced radishes, and I'm gonna take my noodle salad and I'm gonna plate a little bit of it. Okay, that shouldn't take too much longer now because we're coming up to temperature. If you want, you can put a little bit of juice on each oyster, lemon juice. Then I'm just gonna place the oysters on top of the salad. And then, you know, I made this julienne. Could put a little bit of those. Yeah, and that's the dish.
It looks really good. This is mine. I show you mine through the screen so you can try to see that and I'll see yours. So let's see if you can see this.
Fantastic. Mine's more appetizer-y, more restaurant-y.
You definitely win on presentation, Anita. That I'll give you.
Well, it's not a really fair contest there.
And now we have to actually taste it. All right, the moment of truth. Mm. That is really good. Actually, quite refreshing as well with the cold noodles. This is a great dish to prepare. Very easy. Anyone can do it, really. So thank you so much for teaching me this recipe and for talking about oysters and sugar kelp and all of the great foods that we can eat that are not only super delicious, but really good for the planet. I'm looking forward to everyone at home who's watching this, trying this recipe themselves and letting us know if you do try it and if you made any changes to it that are fun that other people would also enjoy.
Thank you. Yeah, cook what you love. Feel free to change to your taste.